What is up, Buff Nation, and welcome on in to the Sko Show on Thanksgiving week. Aniello, Piro, Howell, recording a little bit earlier, posting a little bit earlier than our normal schedule because of the holiday. But the Buffs also have a Black Friday game to round out the regular season. So we'll break it all down. We'll talk about Colorado's painful loss to Kansas over the weekend. But it's the Sko Show, powered by Peckish, and Chase, we're here.
We're here. Thanksgiving week. I don't think you're supposed to work on Thanksgiving week, are you?
You were just giving me crap before the show for saying that.
Yeah, because you had no energy, and it was just sucking the energy out of me.
That's not true.
I got some energy. There's
You
still
didn't have
a
any
chance.
energy on Saturday.
You know what the great, what was his name? Lloyd and Dumb and Dumber, what he said? So you're telling me there's a chance?
There is a chance, but an outside chance if I'm going to put my realistic cap on. But yeah, man, why don't we just dive right on into it? The Buffs, that Grim Reaper meme came to fruition. The Buffs indeed were next as the Kansas Jayhawks end up handing the Colorado Buffaloes their third loss of the season. And frankly, Chase, it wasn't even close.
It wasn't close. Kansas, just all the credit in the world to that team, their coaching staff, what they were able to do, the game plan that they had going in, and just being able to prepare, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They knew in order to beat this Colorado team, they'd keep the ball away from them. They double them up in possessions. They double them up in total plays. Obviously, the run game, they ran all over them, 330 total rushing yards for Kansas, but it was really what they were doing to confuse the CU defense. We've talked a lot about CU's run defense and how it's been pretty stellar all year long. Maybe the Kansas State game, they struggled a little bit, but outside of that game, it was stellar. It was one of the top run defenses in the country. It's been ranked in the top 30. And what Kansas was able to do to confuse the linebackers, I know Danny and I were talking during the game, like sometimes you didn't even know if Levante Bentley was out there or Nakai Hill-Crane. Right. We've talked a lot about the law firm and how good they've been all season long. And I just think all the motion and all the different eye candy that Kansas throws at you, I think it just really confused our linebackers. It made us one step slower, and one step can be all the difference when it comes to the run game. And Kansas was able to run right over them.
Yeah, I mean, the discrepancy in this game is kind of gross. I mean, you talked about the rushing yards, 330 for Kansas to compared to only 42 for Colorado. And we understand that as much as you and I and Danny want to harp on how necessary it is for Colorado to try to establish the run, I mean, this is just embarrassing. You let them rush for 330 yards and you can't even get 50 on your own. But to me, the real tale of the tape here was the time of possession battle. I mean, Colorado didn't even have the ball for 20 minutes of game action, 1949 compared to Kansas, who had the ball for 40 minutes and 11 seconds. How are you going to win a football game that way?
We talk about all the weapons that they have offensively. We talk about how they can score at will. And I think what we've seen in a couple of those other games is, yeah, they've had a few 3-and-outs. Texas Tech, the offense got off to a slow start. Utah, it felt like the offense got off to a slow start, but the defense was able to keep them alive in those games. The defense was able to get stops and get the offense back out on the field. Maybe the most surprising stat of the game, the most eye-popping stat, Kansas didn't have to punt. They didn't have one punt in the entire game. And if you're not making the other team punt, if they're driving down the field every single time they got the ball, and the defense did a good job of keeping Kansas out of the end zone late, especially in that second quarter, kind of keep CU in it. But they weren't punting. They were kicking field goals. They were getting points every single drive. They were driving right down the field. They were holding on to the ball. They were keeping CU's offense off the field. And when you do that, you're going to win football games, no matter how talented the opposing offense is.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, and Kansas just had and executed a tremendous game plan. I mean, that's the reality of the situation, and we'll kind of dive into Colorado's flaws and whatnot. I know Coach Prime came out after the game and said, y'all started feeling yourselves a little bit, and it doesn't surprise me. I'm not trying to say, yeah, what's that smell, right? They were all hyped up. You got the Julian Lewis commitment earlier in the week. It seemed like Colorado could do no wrong, and that's why I think it's just so disappointing. It's one thing to lose like you did to Kansas State, right, where you kind of, well, now that I think about it, Kansas and Kansas State, the state of Kansas is not friends with the Colorado Buffaloes. I also blame Troy Rank of the Denver Post. Let me just come out and say that. Troy opted to go to Kansas City for this game this weekend. I produce his Broncos podcast for us here at Mile High Sports, and I'm recording with him on Friday as he checked into Kansas City. You know what Troy tells me? He's like, maybe I'll see a win here. I haven't seen the Broncos beat the Chiefs here in like 8 or 9 years. And I was like, well, hopefully you can, right the wrongs there. And the Buffs end up losing in Kansas City. So, Troy, I blame you.
Did Troy go there instead of Las Vegas, or he
Yeah,
went to both? Oh, he
yeah.
went there
He didn't go to
instead of
Vegas. That's what I'm
Vegas.
saying. I blame Troy.
Oh, Troy.
He's not bringing the vibes for us. But no, in all seriousness, man, look, you were I don't want to say any of us were expecting a letdown for Colorado, but that's a tough one to lose because we'll talk about this Oklahoma State matchup here on Black Friday. You feel pretty good about CU's chances in that one. I mean, CU was the favorite, albeit a slight one, in this matchup against Kansas. And like I said, there's a difference between losing like you did to Kansas State, where you're in it till the very end, and losing like you did this last weekend at Kansas. I hate to admit it, but very reminiscent of that loss to Nebraska. I believe CU also scored 21 points in that game.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference was CU was out of that game in the first quarter. It was so hard for them to come
Mm-hmm.
back. Whereas in this game, the defense actually held them to some field goals, kept them in that game. We didn't see the turnovers from the offense that gave Nebraska great field position, and they were able to capitalize on those. That was one thing. CU's offense actually, for the amount of time of possession, they played pretty well. It would have been nice to see them establish the run game just so that they could hold on to the ball for a little bit
Correct.
longer. They could extend some drives and keep our defense off of the field. But I thought the offense, I mean, for what they had, they actually played all right. It's just we weren't able to see those offensive weapons because they never had the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Shador Sanders was Colorado's leading rusher in this game. He had 4 carries for 26 yards. Isaiah Gustav only had 11 yards total on 2 carries. Dallin Hayden, 5 yards total on 4 rushes. So it was just a slog of an offensive attack.
The running backs had what, a total of 8 carries? I know you have it in front of you. I think it was 8 or
Yeah,
9 carries, which is
yeah, 8
great.
carries. Yep.
It's like if you're just throwing the ball on every single down, and you're not going to get percentage wise, there are going to be times where you're going to go 3 and out,
Right.
and you're not going to be able to hold on to the football. And what they had to do in that game was extend some more drives because that defense was just gassed. Every time they went out there, it was a long drive. They got gassed. That's what's going to happen when you don't hold on to the football.
Well, and like I just said, you kind of have to just tip the cap. You got to give credit where credit is due. Kansas executed a phenomenal game plan. They've been doing this now 3 consecutive weeks, right? We talked about Iowa State. We've talked about the games leading up to this, and that's exactly what the Jayhawks did. Travis Hunter, the lone bright spot for Colorado on the day, though. I think he did solidify his Heisman candidacy. And I don't know. I'm seeing some bogus takes out there. And look, no disrespect to Gentry at all, but 8 receptions, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Travis in this game. I mean, the score is not 37-21 because of Travis Hunter, right? Like, he as an individual did everything he could and played at a high level.
Well, yeah, and even on the defensive side of the ball, Kansas wasn't throwing the ball. They definitely weren't throwing the ball to his side. He
No.
actually had a couple of interception opportunities that just went through his hands. I mean, they would have been incredible interceptions if he was able to catch them. But yeah, Travis Hunter did what he had to do, solidified it, 2 touchdowns. Clearly the best player on the field. I know Devin Neal looked great as well, Kansas's running back, but Travis Hunter was the best player on the field. He has shown that he's the best player on the field in pretty much every single game. Locked up the Heisman. I think the odds are somewhere around minus 1,000 now.
Yeah, it's over. I mean,
It's
it's
over.
essentially a foregone conclusion at this point.
And you're always going to see hot takes. You're especially going to see hot takes when we're talking about Colorado. People do not like them. They do not like all the hype that Travis Hunter gets. But if you think that he is just getting the Heisman because he plays a ton of plays, you're not watching these games. You're not even looking at the stats. I think Travis has moved himself up in terms of receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. I think he's now towards the top, and he has a serious chance of winning the Blitnikoff Award, especially if he
Yeah.
has a good game against an Oklahoma State defense that just is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, and Colorado with an opportunity to finish this season, the regular season, albeit on a strong note, when they have Oklahoma State coming up here on Black Friday. That's a 10 a.m. kickoff, and I'll be at number 38 along with Danny Bailey and the rest of the crew, having a good time for our Mile High Sports watch party. But I want to talk about why, as sad as that game was and as frustrating as that game was, why this is still a tremendous season, all things considered, for the Colorado Buffaloes. But before we do that, let me tell you and spread the good word about our friends over at Peckish, our presenting sponsor right here on the Sko Show. You've heard us talk about them all Buffalo season long. 2 locations across Colorado, one up on the hill in Boulder. So if you're going up for that Oklahoma State game, or if you're going up to catch some hoops or tour the campus, be sure to check them out over there. And for all of the Denver Metro Buff fans, make sure to check out their brand new location in the Denver Tech Center. I mean, I talk about their chicken wings, I talk about their pizza all the time. And I believe, rumor has it, I believe Byron told me this, they will be open on Thanksgiving. So if you're looking to, get some drinks on Wednesday, Blackout Wednesday, or, maybe even during the day on Thursday, our friends are going to be there.
Definitely, it'll be a great spot on Wednesday. But if your family doesn't make very good food, if you don't like dry
Feel bad for
turkey,
you.
if you don't like dry stuffing, yeah. First of all, I feel bad for you. But second of all, you might as well just slide over to Peckish and have some delicious wings, maybe even some turkey wings. Did those even exist?
Ooh, I think they do. I'm gonna have to make a special request to
Okay.
Byron. But if you can't make it out throughout the course of this week, both Danny and myself we're actually going to be up there in the Denver Tech Center location on Saturday, doing a little sports trivia, having a good time. Entertaining the people at Peckish. But be sure to check them out, guys. 2 locations across Colorado. Like I said, one up on the hill in Boulder and one in the Denver Tech Center, right off of I-25 in Bellevue. The bone-in wings are the best in the city. The boneless wings, if that's your thing, are phenomenal as well. And the pizza, you cannot go wrong. So be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish.
I went over there for my first Buffs game. I went for the CU basketball game yesterday. That was also very disappointing, but that one was more
Yeah.
expected than the game on
I
Saturday.
think that's the frustration with the shock and awe. Like I said, check out our friends over there at Peckish for all your CU Buff viewing. But I think that's the frustrating part about this game for CU against Kansas is the manner in which they lost. Like, it just felt like the win was kind of taken out of their sails. Like I said, after riding high, after winning all those games and contending for a spot in the college football playoff, and then getting Juju Lewis and the commitment and everything that kind of comes along with that, to kind of let the air out of the bag, for lack of a better phrase, I think is frustrating. But I want to say something that Danny Bailey told me while we were at number 38. Relative to what CU football has been historically in the last, since the turn of the century, you can't really ask for much more. And I understand that maybe they're going to fall short. Look, they're not college football playoff and Big 12 championship aren't technically dead, but they're going to need a lot of help if they want to get to that spot now. But at the end of the day, at 8-3, everything that this season has held, the progression of Travis Hunter, the progression of Shedeur Sanders, Robert Livingston's defense, this has been one of the most memorable seasons in Colorado Buffaloes football history ever. Probably just shy of the national championship season.
We're talking about a team that has been to one bowl game. Well, 2 bowl games if you count the COVID year, but nobody does. One bowl game over the past 20 years. And so, yeah, a 9-3 season or an 8-4 season is obviously very successful for CU football. I just think that for the most part, and what we had been talking about over the last few weeks, we were talking about a special season. We were talking about a magical season. And I think a lot of that magic was taken out due to that loss to Kansas and just possibly not playing for the Big 12 championship. I think if they got to the Big 12 championship game, win or lose, I think
For sure.
then we're talking about a special season and one of the best in Colorado history. But it just the win got sucked out of the sails, and that part hurts.
And I think you're right, that part does hurt, but it's hard to make sense of it. Was Kansas just that much better? Was CU just maybe taking them a little bit light? Like, I'm sure it's a combination of the two, but to get this far, right? Because after that Kansas State loss, I don't want to say expectations were tempered, but it was like, all right, like, we're gonna have to run the table. Like, that was kind of the sentiment of like, hey, if we're gonna make the college football playoff and do this and that, I didn't even know how realistic of an idea that was. But when you keep winning and keep winning and keep winning, you beat Arizona, you beat Texas Tech, you beat Utah, right? And you look really good doing it. That belief kind of becomes infectious. And look, it is football, any given Saturday, any given Sunday, whatever it might be. But it is still, an unfortunate way for this kind of season to come to a halt. But it's still been a good one. You also got to give credit to guys like Arizona State. I mean, you want to talk about them? Like, I wasn't even thinking about Arizona State till the last 2 weeks, and now here they are at 8-2, atop the conference with Iowa State.
Yep, probably the best chance to go to the Big 12 championship with their matchup against Arizona and just how bad Arizona has been. But it's so hard in college football to run the table. I think we've seen that with the SEC and how much the SEC is beaten up on each other. It just seems like college football has changed to where you don't get a lot of dominant teams anymore. There's much more parity. And I guess I don't think people expected this from the NIL world and the transfer portal world, but I think that's exactly what has happened is you have seen so much more parity. And after that Kansas State loss, to talk about running the table, and we knew it was doable, especially with how they had looked, but it is so hard to do.
Yeah, no, it's extremely difficult. And that's where, like I said, you got to give credit to Kansas, but I've said it a couple times now throughout the course of the show. Coach Prime admitted these guys started feeling themselves. And it's like, that's the type of stuff that you just can't have. Like, and I understand that like every big time college football program feels themselves, right? Like, it's like, yeah, Ohio State, they probably do it, right? Everyone gets all hyped up on the energy, but you still are CU at the end of the day. And that's not to try to take away anything that they've accomplished this year, but they had, what did you and I talk about for the last 3 or 4 weeks. They embrace that underdog mentality. They love going into opposing teams' buildings, not necessarily from the betting lines, but they love going in with that chip on their shoulder. And it felt like the chip that they had on their shoulder for a majority of the year has just been kind of wiped away. And they're like, no, 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 we're this good now. We know exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, as opposed to keeping up with that chip on their shoulder to try to come in there and wreak some havoc. And like I said, Kansas was the better team that day. But now it's like, to your point, you were so close. You were on the edge of the finish line because you expect them to beat Oklahoma State, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. And to see it kind of just fall apart in the manner in which it did, it's sad. But all things considered, hindsight's always 2020. To our point, great season nonetheless.
What did Coach Prime say? They started sniffing their own cologne. I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that line. I like to sniff my own cologne, though, especially when I smell good. But I don't have to go up against a team like Kansas, and I just think they did not look as prepared as what Kansas looked like going up against Colorado. Kansas was fired up, ready to play, but their coaches had them prepared, and all the different things that they were able to throw at the CU defense, CU just didn't look ready for it. And when you get a step slower, you end up getting run all over, and I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Neal had 207 rushing yards.
Should
One player.
Should he be the Heisman?
Yeah, one game. Let's make Devin Neal the Heisman. But, even Jalen Daniels, we talked about how on the preview show they're going to need to figure out a way to get the ball and turn it over, right? And clean game across the board from the Kansas offense, and they did what they were supposed to do. Are you surprised Shador did not get ejected for that referee situation where he kind of pushed the ref or shoved the ref a little bit?
I'm surprised that Kansas defender didn't get ejected for trying to take out both of his knees.
It's true.
I mean, that was the umpire. That was the guy that was running the show. If he wanted to eject him, he probably could have. But I think tensions were so high, and I think Shador was trying to go after a Kansas guy, and he just kind of lost it. But yeah, apparently they're going to handle it internally. I think Brian Howell reported that they're going to handle it internally. Obviously, you're never supposed to put your hands on a ref. You're never supposed to shove a ref. But I don't think Shador even knew that was a ref that was in front of him in that moment.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a heat of the moment type of dynamic. But definitely not a good look. Optically, when you're down like that, right? Like things aren't going your way, it's definitely not a good look. But yeah, to your point, Brian Howell reporting that this will be handled internally.
How does Shador always have these moments when CU's losing, or he always does something that will rile up the haters?
Always. Well, and all cameras are on him too.
That's probably the biggest reason. Anything. Yeah. I mean, against Nebraska, he leaves for the locker room and all the haters come out screaming about why is he leaving early. In this game, he ends up shoving a ref. It just seems like he can't get out of his own way sometimes when CU's losing.
Yeah, no, I think it's well said, but optically, not a good one for Shador and company, not a good one for the Buffs whatsoever. But they do have an opportunity now to finish the season on a strong note, get to that 9th win, finish the regular season 9-3, get themselves in a really high quality bowl game. Black Friday, 10 a.m. local time here in Colorado. They'll welcome in the Oklahoma State Cowboys for the final game of the regular season. Oklahoma State, a team that was projected to be one of the better teams in the country before the season, before things started to fall off for them this year.
Yeah, they're a bad football team. There's no other way to put it. They don't have a conference win yet. They've lost, 8 straight games. They've given up well over 35 points a game. I think they're probably over 40 points a game on average. It's the defense that has really, really struggled. Ollie Gordon, a great running back, he's actually started to play a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. 121 rushing yards against TCU, 156 rushing yards against Texas Tech, where Oklahoma State was able to put up 48 points. So another team with, as Danny Bailey likes to put it, a real running back. Ollie Gordon is definitely a real running back. And
he was the one, he got in some trouble before the year, right?
He had a DUI, I believe so. But Coach Gundy said, it happens to everybody. He basically said, like, whom amongst us, and just let him play. But yeah, he was in some trouble. He ended up playing in, I think, almost every single game. It doesn't look like he was the leading rusher against Tulsa, but another real running back. It seems like pretty much every Big 12 team that they have matched up with has a real running back. So the defense will have to bounce back from what happened against Kansas, but I just think offensively this Oklahoma State defense struggles, and I don't see how they're going to be able to stop CU's offense.
Yeah, and you see like those memes going around social media, like when your team loses really bad, right? So it's like the Nuggets last night, whooped by the
Knicks.
The Knicks, right? I was gonna say the Lakers, but they were the ones that did the whooping to the Lakers. But like how sometimes after your team gets whooped, like you open up like your respective team's video game, and kind of like run up the
Start
score.
taking them to
You
school,
know,
yeah, put
like
it on rookie
yeah,
mode,
exactly.
and
Like
yeah.
Madden, like it's like 100-0. Like that's the type of energy that I'm expecting from CU in this final regular season game. And I think anything short of that would be a bit disappointing. But I think Coach Prime will keep them locked in. I think they'll have that bad taste in their mouths, specifically on the defense. To your point, this Oklahoma State team has struggled to get things going throughout the course of the season. So I'm looking for CU to come out here and have a pretty convincing victory against the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I think everything is setting themselves up to be able to do that. I think this defense will be fired up to show
They
that they can
have to be,
stop the
right?
run.
A lot of
I
guys playing for NFL draft position too.
Yeah, and I think they've done a great job of bouncing back when they've had some off games. They did a great job of bouncing back after Kansas State, and I think they're going to be fired up to shut down Ollie Gordon. So if they're able to do that, I think CU will be able to run up the score on Oklahoma State because that defense just flat out sucks.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And like I said, it'll be Black Friday, 10 a.m. And if you're looking for a place to watch the game, excuse me, come on down to number 38. I'll be there. We'll have a good time for our final regular season watch party of the Colorado Buffalo season. But I think to kind of just harp in on Chase's point, I agree. Like I think they should be able to take advantage of this Oklahoma State defensive front. I think CU's defense will play wired, fired, and inspired.
There
Come
we
out
go,
there,
Brandon McCartney.
and I think it'll be hopefully a good ending to what has been a good season for the Colorado Buffaloes. Obviously, a bowl game still to play, but in regards to what we knew they were going to play throughout the course of the season, so it's just like I wish I could be more excited about it. That's just kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't want to say it's a formality, nothing like that. But like, this should have been the cleanup game before the Big 12 championship game.
I guess what sucks, and we haven't quite laid out. We should probably lay out the scenario of
Yes.
what they have to do in order to play in the Big 12 championship. But what kind of sucks about it is that CU will be the first team to play, so we'll have to watch CU. They get the win, and then we're going to have to watch some other things unfold after that.
Right. It's good. They need what? 2 losses, right?
So
Essentially, they need Arizona State and they need Iowa State to both lose.
yes, but there's also another scenario where they could get through with both of those teams winning. So if Houston beats BYU, they will need Texas Tech to win because it will actually improve their opponent winning percentage. So they basically need Texas Tech to win, Baylor to. It's so hard to all the math.
They need a
very
lot.
difficult.
We could kind of put it that way.
Yes.
It's
So
like there is no.
if one out of the 3 teams, the only one team that can lose is BYU. So if BYU loses, it gives them a better chance.
Okay.
If BYU and somebody else loses, then they have a really good chance. I think is the best way to put it. So the team that we're rooting for the most, and I have a Houston hat in my car, I almost put it on, but the team we're rooting for the most, I believe they play on Saturdays, the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, anything can happen. It is college football. It is a wacky type of dynamic. Like you can't completely give up on the dream or whatever, but we do know that the Buffs missed a golden opportunity with that game against Kansas State. But I think in regards to where do we go from here, right? To kind of round out the show, whether they get into the Big 12 championship game or not, there's a lot of enjoyment. There's a lot of pride to take away from this season. I'm not trying to write an obituary or anything like that right now, but for regardless of the fact that, to your point, Chase, like this was trending to be a magical season, and even if they do fall short of that magic, this has been one heck of a ride with this Buffaloes team this year. I mean, you're talking about Travis Shador, the defense coming together, the different types of wide receivers that were stepping up. I mean, there's nothing but pride you should have with this Colorado Buffaloes team this season.
Yeah, perspective is an incredible thing. If you had some perspective 2 years ago, we're talking about a CU team in 2024. If at the end of the 2022 season, when Carl Durrell is fired, and we tell you in 2 years you're going to have a bowl eligible team that has a Heisman Trophy winner and one of the top quarterbacks in the country, I think every single CU fan would take that in an instant. I think most CU fans, after Carl Durrell was fired, was like, just find us a coach that can get us back to a bowl game eventually over the next couple of years. And now you have a coach that had them in the college football playoff conversation. It's not out of the question right now. But you have a coach that's probably going to be able to bring a team to a bowl game every single year if he sticks around. And even if he doesn't stick around, I think this program is in such a better spot than it was 2 years ago. And I think you can continue to build on this momentum that Coach Prime has built.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And at the end of the day, it's been, like I said, it's been a crazy season. It's been a fun season. And let's see them finish this regular season strong on a winning note with a big time dub against Oklahoma State. But outside of that, we'll see where the chips fall and we'll have some fun from there. But any closing thoughts before we get out of here, brother?
Let's go Cougs.
Let's go Cougs, baby. Got to root for them.
Who? Oh, BYU. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. But Cougs, Houston. One note about Houston, because I have some friends that went there. You say go Cougs, it's actually Coogs. I don't know
Oh,
why
really?
they've done that historically, but it's about the way that you spell it. BYU, I don't think they do that. I don't even know what
No.
BYU says.
Yeah,
Just
I don't really know either.
the Super Soakers. That's what we call them. BYU
Ay,
Super
ay, ay.
Soakers.
All right. Well, good stuff, man. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow Chase on social at Chase Howell _. I'm at Media by AP, and also be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish, proud presenting sponsor of the Sko Show. 2 locations across Colorado, one up on the hill in Boulder, and one off of I-25 in Bellevue. Make sure to check them out. Let them know that Mile High Sports sent you. But one more regular season game left. We'll be back after that one to break down bowl season and everything that comes with it right here on the Sko Show on Mile High Sports. Talk to you guys then. Enjoy the game this weekend, and Sko Buffs.
The only BYU Cougar I know is Zach Wilson's mom.
Look, I'm tired. It's Thanksgiving week.